And now it's time for your reality check. The devastating shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School left 17 students and staff dead. Many of the survivors aren't waiting for the adults to make the change to prevent the next school shooting. They are taking to the streets and state houses and the internet to call for action on gun reform. Here are some of the ways they are taking the fight into their own hands. And I gotta tell you, it has been so powerful to watch them. So today, I returned from being out west, and I got a chance to see. And these kids remind me of myself, man, because I mean, they're doing it. My high school, Fort Lauderdale High School, they had their walkout on Tuesday. Solidarity, Go Flying L's. My brother's high school, the Western High School, they walked out today. They were also joined by my middle school. Tequesta Trace Middle School had a 17-minute walkout today, demanding school safety. They've taken buses to Tallahassee. And what makes this story so crazy for me is that as students took almost 10 buses to Tallahassee and packed the gallery in the state legislature of Florida, Republicans still refused. They voted down overwhelmingly, 71 to 32. They voted down a debate, not even the bill, a debate to ban assault weapons like the AR-15. We also, if you're watching this taping, President Trump had a listening session with survivors of not only Stoneman Douglas, but with Sandy Hook, with Columbine, and with students to talk about the issues facing school safety. One of the ideals he proposed was arming teachers. Now I'm going to get to that in a minute, but before I talk about what's wrong with President Trump's plan, I want to talk about what's right with what we're seeing taking place all across America. The good book, the Bible, says that it's the children that shall lead us. And never have I felt more that way than I do today. Every single social movement that we've ever had in this country has been led by the young people. And this one's no different. If you go back to the civil rights movement, when you had Freedom Summer, right? When you had the Montgomery bus boycott, when you had people sitting in at lunch counters, these were high school students who did it. I know one in particular who, she said, we would leave high school and we would go down to the local Woolworth lunch counter and we would sit in. And that's exactly the level of activism that we are seeing take place, starting at Stoneman Douglas High School with the survivors of this atrocity and moving all across the country. It is taking up cities like Iowa, New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, where students are saying we aren't safe and we need you to do something about it, Congress. And listen, first of all, and there's been some who've condemned these students. And to those people condemning these students, let me tell you something. And let me make this very clear. You're on the wrong side of history if you condemn these students. If you stand with keeping the AR-15 in proliferation, you are on the wrong side of history, period. This is not up for debate. There aren't many sides. There's either you are for 18-year-olds being able to buy AR-15s or you're against it. But truth be told, the AR-15 shouldn't be in proliferation at all. Why? In God's name, are we proliferating a military-used weapon? And why in God's name are we allowing people to have bump stops that which can turn a semi-automatic rifle, the AR-15, into an automatic rifle, which is illegal in the United States? Last week on the show, I talked about the Huffington Post reporter who was able to buy an AR-15 in just under 38 minutes. At the White House, during the president's listening session, a student brought up another story where an individual was able to buy an AR-15 in 5 minutes with an expired ID. America, we have a problem on our hands, and we could choose to be bold and fix it, or we could choose to do nothing at all. A couple years ago, Australia had the same problem. They had a massive school shooting. But you know what their lawmakers did? Their lawmakers, they responded with action. And thanks to the action in Australia, they have not seen another school shooting since then. Don't get me wrong. You guys know I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe in people's rights to bear arms. So some people on here will try to make this argument that I believe in gun confiscation and bullets confiscation, but that is far from the truth. All I'm saying is, and I think what these students are saying, is if you are supposed to have a gun and you qualify to have a gun, then you should have a gun. If you don't qualify to have a gun, then you should not have a gun. And what we have right now is a very murky situation where an 18-year-old with a troubled past is able to acquire a weapon and kill 17 innocent people. And people are trying to blame it on everybody else. They're trying to blame it on the FBI. They're trying to blame it on the fact the school didn't have enough security. But they refuse to put the blame where it should lie, with the legislatures of Florida and with our Congress. How is it possible that before you can buy a pint of vodka or a beer at the local 7-Eleven, you're able to buy a weapon that can kill 17 people in less than 3 minutes? America, we've got a problem on our hands. But here's the thing, you already know that. A recent poll was taken and found 66% of Americans want stricter gun laws. And that poll also found that 50% of current gun owners say they want tougher gun laws. So these students aren't in the wrong place. Let's take a listen to two survivors talk about the NRA's influence on Americans' politics. This is courtesy of CNN.
Look, I don't have to tell you guys, they give millions of dollars to politicians. They have a very powerful tool. So, I mean, how do you expect politicians who need money to keep running for office to say no to the NRA?
Because we keep telling them that if they accept this blood money, they're against the children. They're against the people who are dying.
I think he's absolutely right. The blood is on their hands, and it's very sad to watch Florida legislatures in a room full of gun violence victims sit there and vote down an amendment just to debate, and a rule just to debate banning of AR-15s. But it shouldn't surprise you, because after Sandy Hook, when we saw those innocent kindergarteners and first graders have their life taken from them, we saw our Congress here in the United States do the same thing. Instead of standing up for students and standing up for families, our Congress voted down a bill that would strengthen our background check system. And now President Trump is trying to run as fast as possible to get something done. But the Republican Party and our legislators on the state and the national level have failed these students, which is why they're taken to the streets. And you can join them. On March 14, 2018, there's going to be a National School Walkout Day. The Youth Empowered Group is planning a National School Walkout Day on March 15th at 10 o'clock. In every time zone, organizers are encouraging teachers, students, administrators, and parents to ally together and walk out for 17 minutes. A minute for every individual that was killed during the Stoneman Douglas massacre. On March 24th, students are organizing a rally right here in Washington called the March for Our Lives. This march has created so much fanfare that George Clooney and his wife have donated $500,000, and they've been joined by Steven Spielberg and media mogul Oprah Winfrey, who have also donated $500,000 as well. And on April 20th, the anniversary to the Columbine shooting, the 19th anniversary. Now you have to remember, these young people who died in Stoneman Douglas, many of them weren't even alive when Columbine happened. So we have failed. I mean, that's the crazy part. I'm going to get back to this walkout, but just think about that for a minute. Put those dates in your mind and say, April 20th, 19 years ago was the first mass school shooting, and we as a nation did nothing. And since then, we've had school shooting after school shooting after school shooting. We've had a member of Congress gunned down who was a Democrat. Then we said to ourselves, well, maybe if it hurts your own, you'll change your position. But it did hurt their own. Steve Scalise was shot on a baseball field just 20 miles from this here studio, and Republicans did nothing. A man walked into a church and opened fire with an AR-15, and Washington did nothing. A man at a country concert in Las Vegas shot out the window of the Mandalay Bay, killing in the 10s and 20s and 30s and 40s of people, and we did nothing. Now, America, it is time for something. So April 20th, 2018, these folks are planning a march right here in Washington and a walkout to protest gun violence. And we'll be joining them.